I'm here today to talk about my TBR pile for IndigAthon. So, IndigAthon is a month-long readathon. It takes place in November. It is created and hosted by Brodie over at @2Brodie and Michelle over at For Once Another Letter. I'm going to link both their channels down below. I highly recommend you go and check them out. They give great recommendations. And I'm also going to link their announcement video down below. There are prompts for other social media platforms, which I won't be participating in because I'm lazy and I only use YouTube. But if you are on other platforms and would rather take part there, then it is definitely worth going to check out their announcement video to see all the various options. So the aim of IndigAthon is to read books by Native American authors. Now I, in the last few years, have got really interested in picking up books by Indigenous authors. But when I took a step back and had a look at books I'd really enjoyed and books I had on my TBR, I realised that the vast majority of those books have been by Indigenous, First Nations, Canadian writers. And so I really wanted to take part in this readathon and try and make sure that I was reading from Indigenous people from all over the world and not just from Canada. So I have this stack here. These first couple I've already mentioned in my non-fiction November sort of TBR video, but I'll just briefly mention them again here. So this first one is The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee, Native America from 1890 to the present by David Treuer. So this book is sort of in response to, I can't remember the title of the other book, I'll put a picture of it up here. And that book was about the idea of the massacre at Wounded Knee, but it was written in a way as if to suggest that Native American people sort of died out and ceased to exist after the massacre. And David Treuer wrote this book to, you know, give evidence that that is not the case, and in fact there's lots of Native American people who continue to live in rural and urban areas after that point, and he gives the account of their lives from 1890 to the present. I've heard phenomenal things about this. It's super chunky, but I really want to get to it. Now there is a bingo board with 9 prompts, and I think I'll be fulfilling 7 of the prompts. I won't be reading the group book because I can't get a hold of it here, and I won't be doing a buddy read because I'm like a rubbish buddy read at the moment and just let people down, so I haven't organised anything. But one of the prompts was to read a book by an Indigenous writer who isn't Native American. And so, as I said, I have lots of books by Indigenous Canadians on my TBR, and one of the ones I really want to get to for non-fiction November is In My Own Moccasins, a memoir of resilience by Helen, Knott. I think this is going to be absolutely phenomenal. Could be one of my books of the year. Cannot wait to get to it. So now I have 4 fiction books to talk about, and all of these books are new to me. So you'll see I have a library book, I have 2 new books which I haven't hauled yet on the channel, and also one that hasn't arrived yet because it comes out in November, so it hasn't been posted to me yet. So the first one I've seen a couple of people mention, it sounds absolutely brilliant, and that is Elatsoe by Darcie Little Badger with illustrations by Ravina Kai. So one of the prompts is to read a middle grade book. I'm not sure if this is middle grade or YA, so I'm going to count it. I feel like it's packaged in a way that makes it look more middle grade to me, but what do I know? So this says it's set in America, very like our own, but one in which it's been shaped dramatically by the magic, monsters, knowledge and legends of its people, those Indigenous and those not. Elatsoe lives in this slightly strange America. She can raise the ghosts of dead animals, a skill passed down through generations of her Lipan Apache family. And her cousin has just been murdered, and she decides to sort of investigate using her magical ability. So yeah, as I said, this is, I think, a middle grade. Another one of the prompts is to read a book written by a Native American author who's not from one of the 5 civilised tribes. And I believe this fulfills that prompt. Then a couple of the prompts are like a free space and new to you. And as I said, all of these books are new to me, and I guess like all of them could fit the free space. So the first one is a library book, and that is LaRose by Louise Erdrich. I previously read The Roundhouse by this author years ago when it first came out, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I always meant to read more of her books, and then I started to hear people say that she had like a couple of really big series. I think one of them called the Love Medicine series, or maybe one of her books is called that, I'm not sure. And then there's another series as well. And I started to get a bit worried about like where I was supposed to start and a bit confused. Anyway, so this is another standalone. So I'm going to start with this, but I have since found out the order you're supposed to read her other books in. So actually I'm going to try doing that next year and try and get through one of those series, which I think could be really fun. But this one is set in North Dakota in 1999. And a man is out stalking deer and he accidentally shoots his neighbour's son instead of a deer. And it says, horrified at what he's done, he turns to an Ojibwe tribe petition for guidance to find a way forward. Following an ancient means of retribution, he and his wife will give their son, LaRose, to the bereaved parents of the boy he killed. So that sounds really heartbreaking. Actually, the Roundhouse was incredibly heartbreaking and distressing, but she pitched it perfectly, and that also had a young boy as a sort of main element of the narrative, and I really enjoyed it, so I think she's going to handle it excellently here as well. The next one I have is a short story collection. Have I read any short stories this year? Probably not, which is, no I have, Heads of the Coloured People, which I loved, which shows that I should read way more. I used to read so many, I'm rubbish now, I'm ashamed. So, I love the sound of this one, so I had it on pre-order, and that is The Beadworkers by Beth Piatote. And I didn't realise, but when this arrived, the cover actually looks like stitching, so you probably are not going to be able to make that out on camera. But yeah, this looks like someone has done this as like a tapestry, which I love. So something I really love the sound of about this one is that, you know, as always in the blurb of short story collections, it sort of gives you a sample of what some of the stories are going to be about, and they span lots of different time periods, which I feel like isn't something that's that common, or at least not in short story collections I pick up. So I'm really interested to see how somebody handles like contemporary stories and then stories set in like the 1960s. One of them is a retelling of Antigone. So it says, this is her first collection and it draws on Indigenous aesthetics and forms to offer a powerful, sustaining vision of native life. Beth Piatote is Nez Perce enrolled with Colville Confederated Tribes. And yeah, I've just heard great things. I've heard a couple of people review this already and say it's just absolutely brilliant, so cannot wait to get to that one. And then I have the final book, which is the one that hasn't arrived yet. It has a glorious cover, there you go. And it's called Even As We Breathe by Annette Saunooke Clapsaddle. This is her first published book, although I believe it's the second manuscript she's written, which I find really interesting. I listened to her talk on the Reading Woman podcast with Kendra, which I'll link down below. It's a really great interview. I'd already ordered the book, and then I saw they had, I was catching up, I'm really behind on podcasts, and I saw they'd interviewed her and I listened, and I was like so glad that I'd already pre-ordered the book. So it comes out on the 1st of November, and so hopefully I will get it, well I should get it soon, shouldn't I? So this is set in the Smoky Mountains in North Carolina, and we follow a 19-year-old who is leaving his Cherokee reservation, and he goes to work in sort of like a fancy hotel, but this is during World War II, and there are some diplomats who are being kept there as prisoners of war. And I've heard this spoken about, like I said, on the Reading Woman podcast, and I get the feeling that there's a mystery in this story, but that it's best to go in like completely unspoiled. So I haven't read any more of the blurb than that. I know he's 19, I think there's another native person working at the hotel who's of a similar age to him, so I think this is going to be a sort of coming of age and him sort of trying to make his life separately to the reservation, but then realising what it's like to live in a world surrounded by white people. One of the prompts is to read a book that has a form of intersectionality in it, and my understanding is that the main character, County, has a disability, although having not read the book I'm unsure about the representation of that, but that's all I know for now. And Annette Saunooke Clapsaddle is an enrolled member of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, and this is the first novel published by anyone from the Eastern Band, although I think there has been like poetry in other forms, like maybe non-fiction published. So yeah, it's really exciting. And then the final prompt is to like experience some form of non-bookish media. And I've heard about a film I wanted to watch, and I saw the other day that it's on Netflix. I actually think this is set in Vancouver, so I'm not really sure if this counts, seeing as the aim is supposed to be on the Native American experience, but please do give me recommendations for films, TV shows, anything of that nature that is Native American, because I'd be really interested in that. This is a film I wanted to watch anyway. It's called The Body Remembers When the World Broke Open, and this is about two Indigenous women and their experience together. I believe one goes through something really traumatic and the other woman reaches out to help her. I think this is going to be a pretty bleak film, but I've heard that it's absolutely beautiful and they're both phenomenal in it, so that sounds like the sort of film I would love. So yeah, those are my plans for IndigAthon. Please let me know if you will be taking part. I would love to know. I'd also love to know any recommendations. As I said, I think I'm pretty rubbish at reading books by Native Americans. I've read, like I said, Louise Erdrich, and off the top of my head, I've read There by Tommy Orange, which I really enjoyed, but maybe there are a few others, but like shamefully few. So please, please, please give me recommendations for other books by Native American writers, and I will hunt them down. You know, an issue we do have is, like, out of this stack I've just shown you, the only ones that have actually been published in the UK are these two. I find that Indigenous fiction, wherever it's authored in the world, usually is only published within its own country of origin, and so it's very rare that we have it published by UK publishers, so it's always a little bit harder to get hold of, but I am willing to like order stuff from overseas to be able to read it. So yeah, let me know if you're taking part, let me know if you've read any of these books. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!